to order. I have an echo here. All right. This is the time regularly scheduled for the City of Bisbee Board of Adjustment. We have scheduled tonight 2 appeals from the Design Review Board. The first is by St. Patrick's Catholic Church regarding a screen that's placed in the chain fence. The second appeal is by Vogue Inc. regarding extension of a rail fence. We will follow the agenda and the procedure that's set forth. For those of you that don't have a copy of the agenda, the procedure is as follows. We call the application. The city will summarize the situation. And then the applicant will make its presentation. Following the comments of each person, the board members will be able to ask questions. Now, after the applicant has commented, then persons in favor of the application may comment. And then the board would ask questions. That will be followed by comments by persons who are opposed. And again, the board will ask questions. The city at that time, not the city, but the applicant may then present a rebuttal. And then the city staff may follow up on that with comments. After closure then of the comments, then the board will discuss the matter among itself, entertain a motion, and make a decision. Now, this is a quasi-judicial hearing, so each of those commenting will be sworn in. The parties have a right to appeal the decision, but it must be filed within 30 days or you lose the right to appeal. And finally, I would say that the chair reserves the right to limit comments to 3 minutes. And that's simply going to depend on time constraints and whether comments get repetitive or cumulative. So with that, let's call the first matter, which is that of St. Patrick's Church. And the city, does the city wish to summarize this matter?
I'm going to default to Joe to summarize for me.
It helps if I unmute myself. This is an appeal of the decision that was made by the Design Review Board to decline approving the windscreens that were being used at the pickleball courts at St. Pat's.
All right. So who is going to present the matter for the applicant? Yes, Cynthia, are you going to be doing that?
I will, Chairman Nelson. It's Jana Flagler, attorney for Bisbee Vogue Inc.
Okay, Ms. Flagler, then raise your right hand. I need to swear you in. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And would you state your name, spell your last name, please?
Jana Flagler, Flagler.
Thank you. Proceed, please.
Thank you. Thank you all, first of all, for your service and for giving us an opportunity to speak tonight. We have appealed application, it's DRB decision 20-97. This involves windscreens at St. Patrick's Church. And these windscreens were installed on a 12-foot high pre-existing chain link fence, which surrounded the church's ball court and playground. That ball court and playground has been there for decades and decades. The chain link fence is grandfathered in as pre-existing design and review guidelines allow it to be grandfathered in. The windscreens are a solid tan color. They match or complement the concrete wall below the fence and the colors of the church and the what I understand is the rectory, that building next to it. They are 6 feet high. So the chain link fence is 12 feet, but the windscreens are 6 feet. And the procedural posture of this came from the city requesting that Bisbee Vogue and St. Patrick's Church apply for permission, retroactive permission. So right out of the box, we have a question about whether or not this is even something within the purview of design and review board and city permitting, because we are talking about something that is hung on the fence, and I liken it to curtains and a window, frankly. Legal standard I've included in the materials, and just a word about the materials. The way these are organized is the appeal document with the text of the appeal are in the first few pages, and then the exhibits have a label at the bottom in red, and every page is numbered. It was too hard to figure out how to separate them in a way that everybody could use, since we don't have tabs electronically. So when I refer to something, I'll try to say what page of the exhibits it is. And the photos we put in first, pages 1 and 2 of those exhibit pages show what the screen looks like. And Bisbee Vogue, in compliance with the city's request and DRB's request, submitted with the church an application. Pages 5 through 24 of your materials are the application. So there's a lot of material in that, but I just wanted to put the whole application back in the set. So that's 5 through 24. The DRB then had a hearing February 3rd, and that begins at page 25. And then there was another hearing on March 3rd with a reminder from the city's attorney at the time not to impose an ex post facto law, which is basically after something is done, constitutes a taking. So legal standard here for the Board of Adjustment is first, under Arizona law, any ambiguity or uncertainty in the legal rights here must be resolved in favor of the property owner. And zoning ordinance is by nature a restriction on common law property rights. And if you are going to impose one, it must be strictly construed. It must be clearly written, must be detailed, and it must be strictly construed. Also, just a reminder within our own zoning code that the purpose of the design review process is to improve and encourage the use of the property and keep the historic use, structure, sites, objects, spaces, but it at the same time must allow for vibrant, it says vibrant, creative, and livable communities. So I think that one of the things that we want to point out is these windscreens allow for the use of the ball court to be used as the ball court. We have argued in our materials, and I don't want to belabor it, but the DRB's denial of application 2097 was legally unsupportable. The zoning codes allow for reasonable use and encourage orderly development. And there is no mention of windscreens, much less a prohibition against them in the zoning code. And the city attorney, in advance even of that decision by DRB, wrote a memorandum, which is included in our materials. It's in the original materials, also on page 32, which is the last page of what we submitted, reminding the DRB that you cannot have an ex post facto ordinance. Windscreens are already permitted within the historic district. The city of Bisbee itself maintains windscreens, and those are bright blue and are on the chain link fence around the city pool. And you cannot have an ordinance selectively imposed against one party and not the other. And just to address something that was mentioned in the DRB, there is no view easement in Bisbee. National Forest or National Park Service discussion about a view corridor has to do with maintaining natural features, and no ordinance can adopt a view easement in Bisbee when one does not adopt it and impose it against people retroactively. That is a taking, and that is unlawful. Not aside from all the legal problems, the windscreens are architecturally appropriate. They follow the lines of what exists there. They pick up the line of the rectory. They blend in with the architecture. They're the appropriate color, and that area has been used as a ball court for decades, and they do nothing more than increase its usability. For these reasons, the DRB decision needs to be overturned. I am stumped, frankly, because I don't think that the Design and Review Board had any authority to make the parties, the church and Bisbee Vogue, submit an application for something that was not a structural component and not signage. Maybe with these green windscreens that pre-existed, but those are not the issue. This is tan windscreens that are installed. They have no signage, no writing on them. I don't think that the Bisbee Vogue and the church needed to even submit the application, but they complied and provided a great deal of material. And at this point, the Board of Adjustment, I think the best action is to reverse the Design and Review Board's denial of application 2997 and just approve it as requested. And I will answer any questions anybody
Questions
has.
from the board members?
Mr. Chair, Mike Norman.
Yeah.
So
How are you?
I noticed when I was up there, when you're coming down the hill by the church, there's some green windscreens like inside the enclosure that are visible. And you mentioned that, I mean, the tan windscreens are in question, but there's still the green ones in there. Are those going to stay, or are those going to be removed, or what's the purpose of those, the green ones?
My understanding is the green ones provide additional wind blockage. Also, they keep people away from the edge because there's some number of feet distance. They're only visible from that one area on the street coming down. They're behind the chain link fence and well within the ball court. But I don't actually know the answer of how long those are going to be there. I think they're perfectly usable the way they are. We were only addressing the tan screens here.
Are there other questions?
Well, this is Tom Patterson. How easy is it?
This is Mel. I have, I think this could go to the city, the design and review board. My question is, did the city or the review board try to work with you guys on maybe some alternative, or how they can make it more acceptable, or what was the decision based on? Just I mean, I'm still, because once I read the staff report, they said it could go either way. So what was the main reason? What was the point that they said we're rejecting this? Was there something specific that you guys could have worked with? Or maybe make it more acceptable, or some adjustment that could have been made?
It
To the
may
screen,
be,
I mean, was it the color?
that may be an
Yeah, was it
appropriate
the
question
color?
for those who testify who are opposing.
Yeah,
I think
I
they'll
mean,
probably.
yeah.
There'll probably be someone from the DRB that'll be testifying at one point here. That's what's happened in the past.
Okay,
And that question could be answered or asked at that time.
Mr. Chair, this
Okay.
is Tom Patterson. Do I have your permission to speak?
Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, these windscreens, how hard is it to remove them?
The windscreens are extremely difficult to remove on a regular basis. They're labor intensive. They're clipped on with little springy hooks, and there are, I'm gonna exaggerate, but millions of them. There are millions of little hooks
But in,
holding them
but
on.
in- even though it may be difficult, they could be removed, which in my mind, I'm wondering whether that would be considered to be a temporary, not a permanent placement of windscreens, which would make it different and maybe more okay under the code than a permanent. The fact that they, even though it's pain in the, well, even though it's a pain to remove them, they could be removed and put back up. Not that you have to remove them, but the fact that they are not permanently attached, to me, makes them a temporary solution to, you know, I tried searching for it and nowhere in the historic code could I find pickleball. And it is so popular that a lot of recreation centers are now having a lot of seniors that are participating that haven't participated in the past. But with the winds we have in the canyon, it would be impossible without some kind of break. But I think that clip-on may put it in a different category. Joe, what was your reasoning?
I don't think I provided any reasoning with regard to the design review board's decision.
So they made a decision without your input?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into attorney-client privilege communications, but, and I can tell you that just because they clip onto the fence doesn't mean that they're not necessarily a permanent attachment.
Well, if you can take them off, they're not permanent.
You can take everything down.
Well, yeah, if you tear it
take
down,
light
but not if
fixtures
you
off the
unclip it.
There's a difference.
You
It
can't
could be
unclip a
considered
wall, you
fixed.
can't unclip a door.
Can I finish?
Please do.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I would consider it similar to a fixture. A fixture is something that's on property that's not permanent, that can be removed, but it takes effort to remove it. Just like a ceiling fan would be a fixture. It's only held up by 3 screws, but it
Yeah,
can
but
be
there's a
removed.
difference between a permanently attached, anything you attach to real property is considered real property. If it is
No.
attached by screws, nails, cement, anything you clip on is not considered real property. It's considered personal property. And as such, personal property can be removed and added back in. There is a difference, Joe, and it's been in the law for a long, long time. So I don't
Right.
consider anything you can clip on would be considered an addition and become part of the real property.
All right. Hey, Tom, I think we're getting away from the procedure that's set forth. We can discuss this more in detail when the board gets together and discusses.
Well,
All the
we have
comments that have
the
been made.
inspector here who usually comments on these things.
I'm just saying, let's reserve
All
that
right,
until
I'm
later in the
happy to
meeting.
do that.
Okay. Is there anyone else that wants to make comments in favor?
May I address that question
You'll get an
about?
opportunity to rebut later on. Ms. Liggett.
Okay.
Is there anybody else that wishes to comment in favor of the application?
I would like to comment in favor of the application.
All
Do I need
right.
to be sworn in?
Yes, you do. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the
I
truth?
do.
And would you state your name and spell your last name?
My name is Linda Santallanes, Santellanes.
Thank you. Please proceed.
I would like to talk about the windscreen. I'm going to start with this clip-on, not permanent. I work in commercial architecture, when you leave or you vacate a space, anything that's screwed in, attached, electrically connected, you cannot take down. But you can take down anything that has a little nail in it, that is personal property. But that's not what I wanted to really say, but I agree with Tom. What I'd like to talk about is a little bit about what happened at the DRB. I, along with Jana, agree that this is, I don't believe this was really in our purview. This is not in the zoning requirements. It's not, I don't know how it even made it in there. But as far as community member, I think it's a wonderful thing to have because people can play pickleball. There's a lot of activities that happen there. There's arts and crafts. If those windshields were not in there, everything would fall off. You know, people would be battling with it. And so I'm completely in favor of that.
All right. Are there questions of Ms. Antonellis from the board members?
Mr. Nelson?
Yes.
I was reading in the code, and there is, in the historic building code, there is allowance for things like safety, and, you know, there are things that kind of sit outside the building code that also affect the building code. And it seems like this is one of those issues where you can't utilize the property. I mean, everybody knows this spring we had winds up to 40 mile an hour. I can't imagine playing pickleball in that. So there has to be some kind of allowance for usability of the property. And so that's why I see a positive in approving or overturning the DMB decision.
Do you have a question for Ms. Antonellis?
No, this
All
was
right,
a time for positive comments, right?
Can I say
You're gonna have to hold
another couple
your
things?
Till we have the board discussion.
May I say another couple of things?
Yes, one bite at the apple or get another bite, but that's
Okay.
it, Ms. Antonellis.
One of the issues that we were fighting was viewing the actual structure of the parish. And it was, the discussion was viewing it from either Tui's or the other restaurant that's just below that.
Contestants,
No, not Contessa's as much as the one across the street.
High Desert Market.
Thank you, High Desert Market. And when I sit there, there's two things I see. When I see that screen, all it's blocking in my view is the basement of the church. You can still see all the windows, and if somebody's interested enough in going and seeing the windows, they could obviously walk up there. So that's one thing. The other thing I also see is when I sit there, there's so many enormous SUVs. Sometimes that is all I see. So the SUVs by themselves block the view. So I just wanted to say that. I don't think I have anything else to say.
All right.
Thank you.
Questions of board members regarding second comments by Ms. Antonellis? Are there anyone else who wishes to testify in favor of the applicant? All right, if there are none, then we'll hear comments by those persons who are opposed to the application. Is there anyone that wishes to comment in opposition?
I'd like to comment in opposition. It wasn't so long ago that I came before you before on another matter.
Stop right there. Well, I need to swear you in, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you state your name and spell your last name, please.
And so it wasn't so long ago, we were before you on another matter. And many matters from the DRB have come before this board. I'd like to remind the board the purpose of the DRB and why it was founded. When the mine shut down in the early 70s, the Bisbee economy plummeted suddenly, and the town was being ransacked from the inside and from the out. Many buildings had architectural features removed, including the interior of the Copper Queen Hotel, the exterior of the Restoration Museum. Its cornice disappeared, went to the East Coast, was sold off. Many other buildings were stuccoed over. As such, the citizens organized, got the help of the federal government, and put into place these design review guidelines. Sorry, okay. In 1977 through 1980, a 3-year process put these guidelines, had a record of all of the historic structures put into place and documented through the Department of Interior, and Bisbee was put as a National Register of Historic Places. As such, buildings that are registered historic receive special tax status to uphold that designation. Now, fast forward, Bisbee's economy relies on such designation for tourism, such as the restaurants and so forth, like Threes. Okay. In 1991, these guidelines were put into place, and in 1991, they won an award by the Arizona Planning Association for Best Ordinance and Regulation. These regulations are about historic preservation, not design. Okay, I think that the name Design Review Board is a little bit misleading. It's about historic preservation. With the federal government being the creators of this designation, we are sworn to uphold, and I mean the word sworn literally, as volunteers, sworn to uphold the rules thereof. There are rules that talk explicitly about public space, and I'm sharing those. And I've highlighted those that apply to this specific situation that we have here. One is building site. There's 2 columns, recommended and not recommended. Recommended is installing protective fencing, bollards, stanchions on a building site when necessary for security that are unobtrusive as possible. Not recommended is installing protective fencing, bollards, and stanchions on a building site when necessary for security without taking into consideration their location, visibility, so that they negatively impact the historic character of the site. The church right now is undergoing a huge effort, multi-year effort to redo their stained glass. These screens block the view of that stained glass. Thing in the guidelines are site, neighborhood. Recommended is retaining the historic relationship between buildings and landscape features in a setting. In this Iron Man statue, we've got the courthouse and the church. Those create a plaza or piazza. That is a public space there. Setting by widening existing streets, changing landscape materials, or locating new streets, parking areas that negatively impact the historic character of the setting. By removing the ability to view and the church and businesses across the way that are public businesses, where the public can enjoy food, that's why they are cited there, because it's beautiful. By blocking that view, you are negatively impacting that public space. That is set into code right here by the National Register for Historic Places, Department of Interior, which set into place our tax status and the designation of Bisbee as a historic place. I also have some other items I need to address. One is an in reply to John Flagler. These are not curtains. They are not on the interior of a building. They are on the exterior of a building. So her reference to that does not apply in this situation. Are on city property. City property does not answer to a lower level review board like the DRB. So therefore, they don't ask us, and that's set into city law. Number 3. So that argument is null and void. Okay, number 3. Blue, green, tan, doesn't matter. The DRB has no jurisdiction over color. Another reply to John Flagler. She herself just said the screens are extremely difficult to remove. And so therefore, my interpretation of that is that they're permanent and that they are affixed. The DRB, myself, tried many times to work with Cynthia to come up with ways to have them roll up and down so that they could be removed very easily. I believe we were totally fine with that. That was rejected many times. I even volunteered my personal time. Just a reminder, we are not paid for this, we are volunteers. That is, and I believe Sean has some other things in the zoning code that do cover this exact fence that were not presented previously. Thank you for your time.
All right. You clear the screen, please.
Oh, yes, sorry.
And board members have questions for this person? Mel, you had a question, I believe, for the DRB?
I'm muted here. Yeah, my question to Ben is, you said you tried to work with Cynthia. I mean, did you give her some option where it's workable, doable, without maybe, I don't know what the budget for this was. What was the issue? Why you could not come up with a workable solution that will, be good for, because as I look at the recommendation of the staff, they said they are neither for or against. They left it for us to decide. So maybe the board or the city here are not on the same, in the same place. So I would like to know what were the options and why you guys could not come up with a working solution. I mean, we see the benefit of this screen. Mike, another question I may have, I think probably maybe Cynthia or her representative will, Ujana will come up with. How often will these, in the next year or two, are they going to be torn? How effective they are? This will be my concern. Later on, they may look good now, but maybe in the years to come, is this material, you'll have to exchange them or come up with the new, you have to repair them. And I think this is something that I'm talking to both parties here. We have to be concerned about. I can see the benefit of having them there, but I can see in the next year or two, how strong is this material, how effective it is, whether someone take a knife and put a tear in it, will make it really not very attractive. So these are some of the questions I have, and I would like maybe if, DRB to respond to this, and maybe Cynthia Ujana can give us some, because I'm looking down the road. I'm looking about 2, 3 years, 4 years down the road.
All right.
How this is going to look like.
Okay, well, I'll let Ben talk about that. Ms. Flagler can respond in her rebuttal and she'll get it. I want to keep this thing on track because we're going here. So Ben, you can answer the question that was asked of the DRB.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, so on 2 different times, we did offer ways to make this workable so that it can be removable. And both times, both meetings, those were rejected. I do not know why. On the second meeting, I'm a licensed architect. I personally volunteered for free of my time to make a design that would work for them and for the church. That was also rejected. I don't know why. So I don't know what to say. I tried my hardest. I would also offer a little bit of background that this is a second set of screens that are being hung. The first set was green. They had logos on them. A lot of surrounding people objected to them. That is a big reason why this came to the board, because there was community outcry in opposition to the screens. This was not a case of the DRB willy-nilly coming and attacking people. This was out of response from public objection. And because there were logos, it was deemed advertising, and then somebody went and spray painted the logos black, and the public outcry was now it looks worse. And that was, we do also think that Sean, who's the DRB chair, really should get a chance to speak, because he has some very specific zoning code things that cover this explicitly that were not presented in previous meetings. Thank you.
There's any other questions of the board for Ben? Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in opposition to this?
Dennis, could I just make a point real quick?
Raise your right hand, please.
This is Tom Patterson. Do I have to be sworn in? Okay. If I could ask people, when you refer to building code, say whether you're referring to the Bisbee Building Code or the Historic Building Code, because the National Historic Building Code supersedes the local building code. So we need to know which one you're referencing so that we can apply the right standards to it. And that's just a request for clarification. Thank you, Dennis.
You bet. Thank you. Sean, did you wish to comment?
Yes, I do, sir.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Would you state your name, spell your last name, please?
Sean Young, last name is spelled Y-O-U-N-G.
Thank you. Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. First, I want to respond to Jenna Feiger's comments. One, she opened with the chain link fence is an issue for the DRB, and the DRB is well aware that this is a grandfathered item that was done before the guidelines even were implemented. So it is grandfathered. The DRB holds no issue with that. We never had an issue with that. The applicant at the time that when she came before the board thought we were taking issue with the chain link, and we were not. So the chain link we cannot do anything about, and the board already knows that. It's not an issue that we wish to take up or ever would take up because it is grandfathered. I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified. Second, regardless of the color of screens, they are up. One of the things that has been under fire with this application from the get-go is that that it doesn't fall under a purview. And per our own zoning code, pursuant to Bisbee zoning code, article 3.5.2a, the property owner is required to obtain approval from the DRB prior to the change of any building's exterior feature. It doesn't say that fences are not included. It doesn't say that this isn't included. It says any exterior feature is supposed to go before the DRB for approval. That's your laws. That's the laws that I took an oath to uphold. And that's what I do every month as I volunteer my time with the DRB. I'm not paid for this. Second.
Are you referring to the city building code or the historic building code?
That's the historic, that's in your zoning code, both. Because if you're in the historical district, you're under the historic overlay zone.
If it's an item that the overlay refers to that supersedes the local building code. So, I mean, they aren't the same, okay? And
Right, so-
we've had decisions before that differentiated between the two. So I'm just letting
Right,
you know,
but-
we've dealt, and we also let you know, we don't get paid either for being here.
I get you. But if it is in the historical overlay zone, you do have to apply to the DRB for permission to do anything to the exterior of a building. If it's outside of that overlay zone, you do not. We all know that on the DRB. That's a standard mode of operation for us. So I believe it is in our purview. Second, I do agree exactly with Ben Lepley. The windscreens are not like curtains. This is not the interior of the building. The DRB holds no purview over the interior of a building. We only hold purview over the exterior features of a building. In the zoning code under 6.4 walls and fences, it clearly says 6.4B to manufactured zoned buildings. It says are required for screening on the side of and rear property lines where commercial and industrial uses are adjacent to residential districts and shall be constructed of masonry, wood, slatted chain link fencing, or approved landscaping as necessary to be site obscuring and shall be maintained in the condition. Screening fences shall not be less than 6 feet in height and may be required to be up to 8 feet in height, if necessary, to effectively screen the adjacent residential properties under the particular circumstances. There is nothing in reference to screens in this section. It gives you the materials that are allotted, and this is the zoning code that we have currently in the city.
So it does allow for slotted chain
Yes.
link. So the issue is not visibility, it's material.
Correct.
Because you could put, by that, you could put slats all through the chain link and you still wouldn't be able to see the stained glass windows, but it would fit your definition in that particular area, right?
I believe that that would be correct, Mr. Patterson.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And then I would like to also mention under 6.4C.1, under parks, utilities, and government maintenance yards, open fencing. It only allows for open fencing. And I would also like to add to Janet Flager's comments about the city holding windscreens on the pool area. Fortunately, the city understands the historical designation that is bestowed upon Bisbee, and they have installed those screens that do not block the view corridor or sight line of any historical registered buildings. Having said that, the DRB did try to work with the applicant. Unfortunately, the applicant is, I guess, a very excitable person, and there's no reaching common ground when it comes to any type of opposition. We did try, we wanted to see them on a retractable basis. And this is where I go into the viability of this being a long-term thing for the city of Bisbee. I don't know if anybody's drove down the area recently, but they're already tattered. They're flapping in the wind. We're not talking about the green ones that have been there for the longest period of time. We're talking about the tan ones too. We're talking about a canyon that has gusts of wind at 40 to 50 miles per hour. We don't have peaceful little winds here. The idea that we can screen this whole area in it's a little absurd. It's either windy here or it's not. There's not a happy medium. We have gusts or we don't. So I think that honestly, the viability for it in the long term and longevity, it's just going to look terrible. And the applicant has repeatedly stated the costs. Well, this is going to be the cost associated with something that's not retractable or not removable. They cannot withstand the winds here in this canyon. It's just too much. It's going to look terrible down the road. Last but not least, my big concern is if you've ever played pickleball, which I have paddles here, I have balls. And one of the things that I noticed from previous pickleball courts is they require typically a 10-foot height fence that is completely screened in. We've got windscreens right now at 6 feet. The applicant already installed them going around the zoning code. And the question I have, and I think the board should consider, is are we going to wake up next week and have 10 feet of screens up? And then we're going to be right back to the same situation again, because it's not authorized and it's not been put forth. So those are a few of my issues and the code that I brought forth. And even on our residential side of the DRB guidelines, brightly plastic colored fencing is not permitted. So I do believe that this is an issue that should have been before the DRB. And I do believe that we did make the right choice. And I am asking for the Board of Adjustments to uphold our decision.
Here. A question by board members?
Well, one, I would like to say that, and this is Tom Patterson, Mr. Nelson. Unknowns, we're going to come back in a month and it's going to be 10 feet high. I mean, we don't know that. I mean, what happens if that Chinese rocket lands on the church? I mean, you know, we can't use unknowns as part of the discussion. So if people would refrain from that, it would be nice. And color, I don't. The Design and Review Board doesn't mind purple and orange houses, correct?
That is correct. We have no purview over the color of the exterior colors of buildings and so forth. That is not one of our purviews. It was at one time, but that was amended in the DRB code.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions by board members? You ready?
Dennis, I have a question for Sean. You said you have made some recommendation or some other options. Was the cost associated with those, was it unattainable, or was it way beyond and above what I mean, what was these options that were given? Were they reasonable options?
I think that they were.
Yeah, I want a clarification on that one. Yeah.
Sure. One of the suggestions we brought forward to the applicant, and this was brought forward by Ben, is we wanted to see him on a roller device mounted up on the top of the fences so that you could easily just roll them up. And I mean, if you think about it in the terms of cost, yeah, you got some upfront cost from that. But if you, like I just said, if you look at them right now, they're going to be replacing those screens every year. And the applicant's already provided us financial statements to the tune of $3,000 that she spent on installing these screens. And so that's going to be a $3,000 a year yearly cost. So if you put up some type of apparatus to where you could wheel them up, wind them up, just like a screen on a porch, then the applicant's going to be spending less money. I believe that it accomplishes the goal of everything. We uphold the Secretary of Interior's guidelines, not blocking view corridors. When they have their events, they pull them down. And that is really where the board wanted to get, but we were not given the opportunity to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by board members? Does anyone else wish to comment in opposition to the application?
Opposition, I thought you were still on.
You wish to comment, Mr. Laws?
Yeah, I didn't know you were on opposition.
Where are you in?
Sorry if I'm butting in. I guess you were still on the local members, but okay.
You need to be sworn in if you want to comment.
Yes, my hand is up.
Oh, okay. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name, spell your last name, please.
Andrew Laws, L-A-W-S.
Please proceed.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I thought, Ben and Sean laid out, way more than I could ever say. That I really appreciate their research into the actual rules of these things, which is very important, and I think that really says it all, really, that you probably don't need to hear what I have to say, but I will say it anyway, because I'm a neighbor. I'm representing the other neighbors. I'm a little annoyed that they don't want to do it themselves, but that's the way it is. It's hard to get people to participate, but they asked me to represent them. And at the design review board, Linda kind of ridiculed that and said, well, why don't they come themselves? Well, I'm under oath. I'm saying I'm representing them. Tom and Twee are very upset about the screening blocking their view. It blocks the view from their seating outside of the stained glass. And that's really not nice. That's a beautiful thing for their customers to see, and they're going to be blocked. The lady up the street, Sandra Michelle, is extremely upset about it. So upset she doesn't even want to think about it anymore. She's just at her wit's end about it. And it creates like a deeper canyon. She's already in this canyon with the height of the walls of the parking and the playground area is extremely high, and she just makes it. She's down in the bottom of a canyon. It's not nice. So just coincidentally, I was at a city council meeting for something entirely different. Happened to come up that Cynthia was asking to put these windscreens on the pickleball court at the pool park. The city council agreed to let her put the green ones up that said head all over them, but that they could only be temporary, whatever the terms were, they had to be taken down and put back up during windy months. She had permission for the windy months. I don't know exactly what that meant, but they had to come down most of the year. So, she never put them up. Okay, they're playing pickleball up there in the wind, and she never put any windscreens up. Instead, she put them up at the church. And to me, that just seems like, just kind of poking a stick in the eye of everybody for not just going along with what she wanted, to give her everything carte blanche that she demands. And so, it just shows you what is, she doesn't really need them. She doesn't put them up where the people actually play pickleball. So, and a few notes here. Let me just glance at this for a sec. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, my other neighbor, Larry, up behind me, he can still see that green stuff. He's not too happy about that. Why hasn't that been taken down or replaced or something? I mean, it is visible and it looks stupid. So, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from board members of Mr. Laws? Is there anyone else who wishes to comment in opposition to the application? Yes. Please go ahead, sir. Joe? Okay, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, state your name, spell your last
I
name.
just wanted to correct a couple of assertions that were made in favor of Bisbee Vogue. There was assertion that the design review board does not have any authority other than structures and signs. But in the zoning code 3.5.1 regarding the purpose of the design review board, part of what it says is the architectural design review requires the review of exterior design for all building structures or appurtenances, which are to be erected, constructed, converted, established, so on. And if there's any question, I do have a menu for appurtenances up on my computer, if you'd like to hear that.
All right. Did you have any other comments you wanted to make, sir?
No, that was it.
Okay. Board have any questions? Then we'll move on to the, if no one else wishes to comment in opposition, we'll move on to the rebuttal. That would be Ms. Flagler. You wish to rebut the comments that have been made, please?
Thank you. Yes, I do. I'd like to first ask everyone to please remember the applicant here is Bisbee Vogue Inc. a nonprofit and a charitable organization. And they are working in conjunction with St. Patrick's Church and another charitable organization. These are members of the community. They support the community and they provide value to the community. Because the person who represented the organizations in complying with the Design and Review Board's request to submit an application as an individual, I think we need to be careful not to say she or reduce ourselves to ad hominem attacks about people. I think everybody deserves respect, and I'd like to ask for that. The Secretary of Interior guidelines are guidelines. They are the chart it said right there on its face, they are recommendations. And I'd also like to point out they're subjective. Those guidelines require a subjective evaluation, and that does not exist, cannot be created based on those guidelines. The reason that the city pool windscreens are important is they show that there is already a use for windscreens within the city. They're already appropriate, and they are in fact less of, they're hot taller, and they blend less than the windscreens that DRB is considering and that the Board of Adjustment is asked to reconsider here. The law imposes a duty of equal protection. People cannot be singled out. You cannot have within the historic area these disparate uses and then say, no, that's not, those aren't allowed. Those are permanent structures. We can govern them. You either can or you can't, and they are already being used. The requirement to consider buildings and other uses within the historic district is, and look at neighboring property, is 5.3.5. So it's within the zoning code for the historic overlay zone. And I think that requirement has to be met by looking at all of the historic overlay zone, and there are windscreens already in use, in play, and they were not permitted. I realize the city doesn't have to go to the Design and Review Board for permitting, but the city itself cannot violate its own rules and then impose those same rules against its citizens. That is not lawful. The exterior feature changes, that 3.5.2a, which is also part of the zoning code that says that exterior changes have to be submitted, is, first of all, I don't think applies to windscreens. I don't think those are exterior changes, but also it's governed by reasonableness under the law and by the intention of the historic preservation zone, which is 5.3.3, which says that it is to allow for ongoing use and it's not a taking. You cannot impose a subjective historical ordinance and then prevent somebody from reasonable use of their property. So this is, you have to be governed by that first. You can't go to the detail and say, well, too bad you can't use it. And this is a reasonable use. I will also take umbrage at the characterization that the church and Bisbee Vogue went around the zoning code and went around the Design and Review Board to install the windscreens. There's a very real legal question about whether or not those are even something that require the submission to the Design and Review Board. And I think that we want to be careful characterizing things as having some sort of motive. as was pointed out, Designer Review Board doesn't control colors, but colors are important for showing consistency with neighboring architecture and that they are consistent with the general look. You have a church which has a rectory that is decades later than the church in architectural style and when it was built. These screens pick up the same horizontal line, the same color, and they are consistent with the wall below them. I don't know on what grounds a review board, even subjectively, can point to something and say it is out of character when you are talking about a 12-foot tall chain link fence around a parking area with later built architecture next to it. This is a conglomeration, and you have to be careful not to pick one architectural feature and say that, well, this is the damning one, particularly when it is as consistent and in good taste as these screens are. They provide privacy for adults and children who are using that area, and they will also allow the use to occur. We all know, who've been in this town for years and years, that that ball court was sadly neglected for a long time, and it's getting used now. It's a lovely thing to see. I want to address this question of a compromise. A compromise is nice, a solution is nice, and there are some great minds, people who are serving on the design and review board, people who are working at the city, and people who have been working with these two nonprofits who have thought about what can we do? What are the alternatives? But the ultimate process is not a mediation. We are here to follow the rules, to work within the parameters that are given, and to be very careful to remember that the law says any ambiguity must be decided in favor of the property owner. You cannot restrict uses of property based on something that is vague or ill-defined, and in this case, not even mentioned. There were some attempts to try to work out something. That is not going to work. Movable parts, volunteers who could move tomorrow to another city, money that isn't there. Those are not grounds upon which a decision of either city board can be made. And I'm ready for questions if there are any.
Questions from board members? Hearing none, then I will close the comments from the public, and we can discuss or proceed. I would remind the board that we can affirm the decision of the DRB, or we can basically reverse it and approve the application, or we can come up with a modification between the two of those. Does anyone wish to comment about the things that have come out this evening?
Mr. Nelson, Tom Patterson.
Yes, please proceed.
Okay. I find it interesting that if they had gone ahead with one that you can roll down, when it was rolled down, it would block the view of the people that are complaining about the view being blocked. So to be able to put it up and take it down whenever you want to doesn't seem like it is consistent with what they're complaining about. What they're saying is, well, you can't block it all the time. You can only block it when you need to block it, but blocking it then is okay, but permanent is not. That's foolishness. It's either blocking the view or it isn't. And if you allow temporary blocking, it's no different than permanent if you happen to be sitting at the restaurant that day. So I find that argument is not holding any weight at all.
Other comments?
Yeah, I would like to also say Listening to both parties here, I can, because this is screen and this was not allowed to designer board from the 70s. Sometime I wonder, did this screen existed then, the one screen, and the format they exist now. So DRB saying, oh, well, this is something that, you know, when we came up with the rules and regulation, because a lot of changes has happened in the past 30, 40, 50 years in materials and how they look and how appealing or unappealing they are. So this, you know, leaves me questioning, you know, some of the rules and how we're applying them to today's materials that are used that can be beneficial, and yet they can look okay. So we can't just be stuck, well, 70 or 80 years ago, this was the rule. We have to be, you know, evolving. Like I said, I will go back, and I mean, maybe Jenna can address this, and maybe Volk can address this. How are you going to keep the standard of, you know, with the years going on? Are you going to be changing them? Because as a businessman, I'll be concerned about the cost. Because if every time the inspector stops by and sees something that's missing or torn, is going to ask you guys to bring it up to standard. So I will be giving you an advice, maybe a good idea to look at something that will be workable in the long term. And at the same time, I agree with your argument. Something that did not apply years ago, we can apply it in these days. So the board member need to be aware of this. I mean, DRB, and this will be my comment on this. We really have to be aware of this rather than just be stuck. It's either or, and you know.
All right.
That's my comment on this. So we just have to be. That's when we say flexible. That's what I meant. Okay.
Mr. Norman, do you have any comments? I'm not sure he's with us. I'll make a couple of comments. This situation reminds me of the solar panel. When they came out, I don't know how many years ago, but all of a sudden we had a historical district code that didn't deal with solar panels. And so this is somewhat similar in a way. And I would certainly urge the city council to give some study to review the codes, both of the codes, to see what might be appropriate for things of this nature. I'm a bit concerned about the city having a screen and us denying a screen to someone else. Now, I think the comment regarding the view corridors has some merit to it. There is no view corridor problem at the city pool, you know, but the question of view corridor down with the church, we've got comments both ways saying it's a problem, it's not a problem. We have a letter from the High Desert Market saying they haven't had any complaints from their customers about the screens. So it's somewhat of a problem there. It's somewhat of a problem to some people, and some will have a problem not to others. So I do think, you know, that, and I may be wrong, Mr. Estes, let me ask you, if we were to deny the application, are we exposing ourselves to a lawsuit regarding equal protection or something of that nature because the city has a screen and we've denied a private citizen the right to do the same thing?
You're asking me to give you legal advice in a public meeting, and I don't feel comfortable giving you legal advice in a public meeting, and it's not agendized for an executive session, so we could provide that legal advice. If that's concerns that the board wants addressed, then I would suggest that we continue the hearing, and then we can agendize it to where we can have that discussion and that legal advice in an executive session.
How does the board feel about that? You want to decide this matter tonight, or you want to set it over pending a legal opinion regarding my question?
Well, the last time we had something that regarded a legal opinion, we went into an executive session. And I think Ms. Flagler was there for that. So that has been the way we've operated in the past. I don't care to see this particular issue go 2 or 3 hours. I think if we could table it and move on to the next issue, and maybe we could bring this up in executive session on another day and then render our opinion then.
I think you have to agendicize an executive session. You have to publish it.
Yeah, yes, you do.
Go into it and advertise. what you're
Nina
going to be
can tell you
discussing.
what is that, Nina, 48 hours or in advance of the meeting, it has to be posted?
Yes.
How do you feel, Mel? Do you want to continue it, or you want to make a decision tonight?
I think let's make a decision. Let's make a decision tonight. It is like I said, with all due respect to DRB, and you mentioned, Dennis, the fact that solar panel. I mean, you know, it didn't exist then, and now they exist. I think we can prolong this, or we can go and make a decision. I believe we ought to just go ahead and make a decision. If there's enough board member, I mean, I'm one for making a decision tonight.
All right. Let's go ahead and then proceed to make a decision. Is there a motion regarding this matter from either of the members?
Motion to proceed, given, you know, overrule the objection of the DRB and move on.
I'm not sure I follow that. Are you saying?
I think he wants to overturn.
Yeah, overturn.
You want
Yes.
essentially you want to reverse the decision of the design review board and by doing that, approving the application.
Yes,
Is that
that's
correct?
the motion.
Is there a
Correct.
second? Is there a second to the motion? Then I'll second the motion.
Okay.
Okay. We need to, all in favor of the motion, which is to reverse the DRB and basically approve the application. All those in favor, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand because I can't hear what all everybody say. All in favor, say yes. Raise your hand.
Yes.
All right. The motion, and those opposed? Do I hear any noise? Looks like the motion passes unanimously. And that concludes this particular matter. We need to move on to the next application, which is that of Vogue, and regards the design review board denial of their extension of a rail fence. City, is he still with us or he left?
Are you talking about Mr. Estes?
Yeah, the city,
He's still here.
He
okay.
just can't talk to us.
Summarize
Unless
this
we're in executive
particular
session.
matter.
No, I can speak. I'm just not going to give legal advice to the board if it's not in an executive session, because then that voids the attorney-client privilege.
All right. But we're talking about moving on in the next matter.
No, I'm not a problem with that. Someone just asked if I was still here or not.
Oh, no, I was talking about the building inspector.
Oh,
If he's still here.
No.
Yeah, he's there.
wrong, Joe. There's too many Joes on.
Summarize this next case.
Joe's sitting right next to me, Dennis.
I'm sorry?
Joe's sitting right next to me.
Oh, yeah. Okay, if the city's not going to make a summary,
I can do that.
We'll
I thought Joe was still on here. I can do that. I'm sorry, Mr. Nelson. So
You
the
need an
summary,
attorney for summary.
are you here, Joe?
Yes, I am.
all right,
Okay, I'll
did you
let-
wish to summarize?
Surely. Okay, there's, The applicant is requesting a retroactive permission to install an iron railing between the property at 201 Tombstone Canyon and vehicle parking, which is immediately south of her property and immediately south of the railing that she's put.
And who's going to speak for the applicant here?
I am, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I think we need to swear you in again. Go raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You state your name, spell your last name.
Jana Flagler, Flagler.
Please proceed.
Thank you. This appeal comes from the Design and Review Board Decision 2096. It concerns the railings out in front of the building used by the Bisbee Vogue for its offices and bed and breakfast or rooms. It is immediately adjacent to the High Desert Market down on Tombstone Canyon. And the railing was installed in front of the building on Bisbee Vogue property. There's a sidewalk right in front of the building, and it was installed to keep people on the sidewalk from stepping off the edge of the sidewalk because it's a 4 or 5 inch drop there, and to keep the vehicles from pulling so far forward that the nose of the vehicles is intruding onto the walkway in front of the building. That is, again, private property. There was a misunderstanding between Bisbee Vogue and Mr. Ward, I think, about the installation of the railings. I know that the Design and Review Board is not unfamiliar with people coming in to ask for the blessing after construction. In fact, it appears to be something that happens in well into the majority of the times that the Design and Review Board is asked to consider things. In this case, the railings, we have pictures in the packet that show how consistent those railings are, including the historic use of that very property, which had a fence out in front of it in what appears to be the identical location. And it's a pretty cool picture. We don't get a lot of pictures from what I think is the 30s or 40s or 50s, and it definitely shows that use. The packet is included. Again, the materials are labeled with the exhibits in red at the bottom, and pages 1 through 20 is the original packet that was submitted. The Design and Review Board had some discussion, and those excerpts from the minutes, and that's the whole discussion on this issue. I just didn't want to include the minutes of all the other things considered. Those are at pages 21 through 24. And there was not an approval and a lot of discussion about the railings being consistent, but it didn't get approved. And then it was brought back to the Design and Review Board in March, following a warning that was added to the agenda. Cautionary warning was that the board will take a motion and vote. This should only be decided on the design standards, not on what the applicant did not do prior to getting it to the Design Review Board for retroactive approval. A reminder to the Design and Review Board that unfortunately they are asked to consider things retroactively, and they can't use that against the applicants. The agenda is attached at page 25 through 29 for you to look at. And then nevertheless, without discussion, the Design and Review Board simply denied the application, which is under the law, an arbitrary and capricious action. It is prohibited under the law for the board to take that action. And the applicants are entitled to due process of law because, as we said before, Design and Review Board is imposing restrictions on property ownership and private property, and therefore must meet a very high and stringent standard. One of the things that was discussed at the design and review board meeting was a feeling that the design and review board thought it should reject the application out of hand simply because the application was retroactive. And the design, and I think there's, you know, a feeling of frustration that the design and review board is faced with these retroactive applications. That is not a ground on which to reject it. And as the photos show in this packet, this railing is clearly consistent with the historic character of the area. It's a necessary safety installation, and the design and review board should not have rejected it just based on its retroactivity. And so the request for this Board of Adjustment is to grant the application an approval for that handrail that's installed. And I can answer any questions, or I'll attempt to answer questions.
Board members have questions? Well, if not, we'll move on. Is there anyone wish to comment in favor of the application? Yeah, Mr. Young. I need to swear you in again too, sir. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth,
Yes,
nothing
I
but the
do.
truth? State your name, spell your last name.
Sean Young, last name is Y-O-U-N-G.
Please proceed.
I couldn't agree more with Ms. Feiger on this issue. At the time the application was before the board, we were under a different chair at that point. The meeting had ventured off course, and I knew that we could not deny an application based on its retroactive status, that it had to be based upon a design merit. Either it met the standards or it did not meet the standards based upon our DRB guidelines. When I acquired the chairmanship, I did bring it back because I wanted to try to get the fair vote that agenda item deserved. I felt it should have been passed. Of course, I can't influence a board when we are voting, but I did speak to the city and recalling it and bringing it back under the grounds that people who wanted to make a motion were denied that opportunity. And therefore, we were simply voting on the application on its merit when it was brought back and whether it met the guidelines. As the chairman of the DRB now, I see nothing wrong with the design. I think it added to the building. I think it has not detracted in any way, shape, or form. It's added some character to it, and I think that the board should overturn our decision on this one.
Thank you. Other questions from board members? Is there anyone else that wishes to comment in favor of the application? Yeah, Ben.
Hi, Ben Lepley, DRB board member, LEPLEY.
All right. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name. Spell last name.
LEPLEY.
Please proceed.
So I don't object to the fence railing per se. I never have. What I want to do is clarify that the reason we have a board with an odd number of people on it is because design by nature is subjective, and so is historic preservation. Everything is a scale of
Let
grade.
me interrupt. Are you commenting in favor of the application or in opposition to it?
In favor.
Okay, please proceed.
I want to reiterate and speak to John. This should be cut and dry. It is not. That is why there is a board. Design is shades of gray, and so is historic preservation. That's why there is a board.
All right.
That's all. Thank you. And a board that is made up of volunteers who are either professionally licensed or educated in the matter.
Comments or questions from the board members? Is there anyone else who wishes to comment in favor of the application? Hearing none, we'll proceed to those who wish to comment in opposition to the application. Does anyone wish to comment in opposition? Mr. Laws, please raise your hand. You swear to tell the truth,
Yes.
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please state your name.
Andrew
Spell your last name.
Laws, Laws.
Please proceed.
So something Ms. Flagler mentioned earlier about design review board guidelines, something in there that says about creating a livable community. I believe that's where it came from. I wrote down DRB-livable community. Well, that sidewalk was built by Albert Hopper in 1991 as the public sidewalk. He intended it to be the sidewalk from the parking in front to his place, to my place, to the High Desert Market, to anybody that wanted to walk through. And the fencing is blocking access from the parking. Now, instead of a nice sidewalk to, park, get out, walk on a sidewalk, you have to walk in the street. So there's another part of the code here. Zoning code, page 23, 5.3.2. Special provisions for the historic district. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Okay, 5.3.1. Within the district, the legal description, I'm reading the wrong one altogether, sorry. Okay. City code, article 7.11 sidewalks, 7.11.3. All persons in possession of any real property within the city abutting any highway or street or alley or abutting on any lands or premises over which the public exercises a right of way shall keep their sidewalks in good order and repair. Okay, so this is specifically talking about privately owned sidewalks that are on private property. That because it abuts the city property, that therefore then they have to keep it in good order and repair. Now, why would the city have that code in there if it's totally private and it's not intended for the public to walk on? There are lots of places where there are public sidewalks on private property. I haven't researched where they all are, but I'm sure there's more than just the one in front of what used to be called the convention center. That's a private sidewalk. Well, the city would not let them block it from access from the normal point of access, like the handicap ramp on the east end. They would not let them block that with a fence, but
Mr. Laws, you have 30
Rebuttal
seconds.
has blocked the only handicap access to that sidewalk. Yeah, well, I got more, so if you want to hear some more.
Well, point of order, Mr. Chair. When we talked to the chief of police and the police and fire commission, most of the handicap parking places in Bisbee do not meet the state standard for being a handicap parking place, including the ones around the Mercantile building. The signs aren't tall enough, they aren't open enough. And he said they can't enforce any of them because they weren't done properly. So to cite, accessibility to a handicap parking place that isn't a legal handicap parking place. And I suppose most people don't realize you can park in a handicap parking place up to 15 minutes if you have a quick errand to run. But there are really strict standards in the state law as to what makes a handicap parking place. And those around the Mercantile building don't fit the requirements.
Mr. Laws, I have a question. Are you saying that the parking area in front of the Vogue that abuts the railing is is a dedicated city right of way,
Absolutely. There are three spaces.
like a highway, like the streets?
Well, there's been some debate about what the city actually owns, and I don't know where that ended up, except apparently it seemed to be settled that all the, just like it says on the maps, that all property that isn't a designated lot belongs to the city. So it's not private property. It's not listed as a lot on any private property. There are three spaces in front of that building. There's 15 feet of parking between the sidewalk and the little bit of ground that the dirt under the easement, that's always been an easement that's paved by the city, that Cynthia now claims as her private parking spot, but she can't fit a car on it. And so she's blocking access to the parking place that's been there for probably 90 years. Well-established public spot that's city property. So yeah, that's public parking out there.
Do you know for a fact how much the parking area is owned by Vogue and how much is not?
Well, I know that she showed me survey maps, and she drew in the street where she claimed her lines were. And from the line that she drew, it's 15 feet to the sidewalk. That's enough for me to park my truck on, where I've always parked it since I've lived there since '86.
So the fence does abut the private property, doesn't abut the city right away.
No, that is private property. There's two spaces that are completely undisputably nothing blocking them, that are not private lots. There's another space that Cynthia has purchased dirt under the easement and trying to claim that that's now her parking. And let me read to you something about that. It says, division of building lots and minimum lot size. Within the district, the legal description, sizes, and shapes of existing adjacent lots may be adjusted, redescribed, or corrected by sales or exchanges between the property owners without further approval, provided that there is no net increase in the number of residential or commercial lots within the district. She has created a new lot, a tiny lot that is ridiculous, and it's on the city easement. It's where the city paved it as part of the road. So it's an illegal lot.
So your argument is if there's somebody parks in the handicap parking place, that one-sided railing, which is open at both ends, I believe, blocks their access to the sidewalk. Well, what if there's 3 cars parked there? Do you have to remove one so handicap parkers can get to the fence, get to the sidewalk? Because 3 parking places, you're gonna have to go around them into the street anyways if you don't use that sidewalk.
I'd like to
That's
call
ridiculous.
for a point of
no
order. This is
handicap
about
parking
the
place.
railings and not the parking spaces. This is only about the railing. The parking spaces have nothing to do with this application.
Can I respond to
just
his
the
question?
railing.
I have a response about the railing pertinent to his question.
You
The
can speak
railing
about the
blocks
railing, but
the
we
only
cannot
way
continue
to
with the
get a
parking.
Handicapped access to their front
No,
door.
Ms. Williams.
It has nothing to do with parking. It's nothing to do with
Ross says
parking.
he's
I brought that up.
railings.
It's blocking the
Your
only
response.
space where someone can,
Mr. Ross,
Sorry.
proceed. You're muted. You're muted, sir.
good. I'm glad I was muted. You don't want to hear all that. So listen, I never said anything about parking. You asked me about parking, and I appreciate that, but I said the fence blocks the only way someone in a wheelchair or somebody who can't really step up a step can access the front door of the Bisbee Vogue. It has nothing to do with where parking is. There is no handicap parking place designated. It doesn't come from a parking place. It comes from the end of the sidewalk, uphill side. That's the only access for a handicapped person.
All right,
And she's blocked it with a fence.
great.
Can I ask, is the sidewalk level with the street? Or is it up 2, 3, 4 inches?
No, on that end, it's more or less level. There's a tiny, maybe a half an inch bump.
Let me clarify. I asked about the parking lot because Mr. Laws said with a public property and you can't have a fence right abutting a public property, but it doesn't appear that it is public property.
It is public property. It is.
Well, that's debatable, okay?
No, it's not. It is not.
Then why are
absolutely
you
not debatable.
debating it, sir?
There's nothing to debate about it.
All right.
You must have misunderstood
Mr.
my
Laws,
description.
We're finished with your comments unless board members have other questions. All right, is there anyone else in opposition to the application?
Yes, Kiyomi, my partner, would like to say something. Oh, this will show.
My name is Kiyomi Fox.
Sir, you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And would you say your name and spell your last name,
Kiyomi
please?
Fox, Foxe.
All right, please proceed.
Okay. You guys don't seem to have any problem with her having that railing there, but she is using it in a very rude manner that affects us on a personal level and for our business. I'm not sure if you can see this, but this is something that she put up there. Can you read that?
It looks like public open stairs.
Yeah, do you see the bottom? You
I
see what
cannot.
that says? I'll read it to you. It says, public stairs open, dick stick man. Okay, we have this pointing at our building, our business, and our residents. And that is a very rude person. Do you understand that? I have a family here. I have a 14-year-old girl here. I don't want to see that.
Let's remind each other that you have to have respect. We don't attack, and it's not just Cynthia, it's Bisbee Vogue that we're discussing. Not Cynthia personally, but Bisbee Vogue regarding the railing. So please be respectful.
Cynthia,
Right.
you want to talk about respectful? You tell me why she would put something up there saying dick stick man pointing over at our building.
All right.
All right.
That has
This is
nothing to
not
do
an
with the
appropriate-
railings. You're going to be muted. Thank
This
you.
is not an appropriate.
Can you mute her, Miss Williams? Can you mute her?
I did mute her.
You did, yeah.
First of all, her comments were not on the matter that's before the board. And her concern should basically be taken up with the city and another agency. Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to testify or comment in opposition to the application? All right, hearing none, then let's move on to rebuttal. Ms. Flagler, I'd appreciate it if you keep it short.
I don't have anything to add. I can answer any questions.
Anyone have questions, Ms. Flagler? Very well, and I will close the public comments, open it up for the discussion with the board members. Again, we can affirm, we can reverse or modify. Yeah, Mr. Patterson.
I researched this online a lot because I was concerned about what does the historic building code say about safety issues? And one of the things that has been brought up a number of times is prohibiting people from either falling off second floors or falling into the street. Safety issues are one of the issues that have even the state of Vermont had approval overturned because they didn't allow for safety concerns. So to me, it's open at both ends. It's not flat with the road. And so people can travel from one end of the sidewalk with the other. And I would just as soon not have somebody fall in front of a car. And then we would be deciding the city and public or private issue as far as somebody's injury. Safety issues to me always trump. And it doesn't look bad either. I mean, the argument we're hearing is that it cuts off access to parking spaces that are not even under discussion in this matter. So.
All right. Any other comments? I have to agree with Tom, and the members from the DRB that testified. I mean, I cannot see a greatly discernible difference between the railing and that's down on the ground floor as compared to what's up above, which was installed some time ago. So.
And Dennis, another thing, if people are aware, about 2 years ago, the city came through and totally changed the parking along Tombstone Canyon.
Mhm.
And there were people, the person who had bought the property across the street, all of a sudden found out that if the canal runs under it, it belongs to the city. And he lost half his property to parking that the city put in. And it's gone on down the road. You go downtown, there's something that's been built that goes out into the street, blocks a number of parking places and creates parking on the street. So this is not like unusual, and I see it as being much safer than someone actually being pushed into front of a car or something.
Yeah, I also agree with Patterson here. I think this is an open and shut case. I think the railing looks beautiful. They are on private property. The board, DRB testified they had no objection. I did not hear anything from the city saying they have a problem or issue with this. So I believe this is it's not a problem. I think we can move on.
One last point, Dennis, we have made an approval in the past, which caused the person to have to go back and file for a permit they didn't file for, and we fined them for filing it late. So we have dealt with a retroactive permit before.
Yeah, that's a problem the city's gonna have to deal with one way or the other. Then
I make a motion, we approve.
A motion that the board either affirm the action of the design review board or to reverse it and thereby approve the application or to make a modification. What is a motion?
I move we reverse the DMB decision to deny the railing and approve the applicant's request.
Your second?
I second.
All right, all in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye or raise your hand so I can see. Thank you. Those opposed?
Can I ask who seconded that? I
You're
didn't
opposed to
quite
the
hear.
motion, Mel? All right, I know Mr. Patterson voted yes. I voted yes. Did Mr. Mel, how are you voting?
Mel, you just
Yes.
said it was
Yes,
clear cut to you that the railing was okay.
yes. I voted
Okay,
yes.
to
I raised my
approve,
hand.
no. Okay, so he's voting yes to
All right.
reverse.
So who seconded that motion? I'm sorry.
I seconded the motion. I did.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Then that is the decision of the board. That concludes our business for the evening. I thank you all for participating, and I will adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you,
Thank you.
Nina.
Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Flagler.
Good night.
Good, everybody.
Good night.